Carlos and Maria Ramirez thought their mountain getaway would be the perfect escape for their children, Elena and Mateo. But within days, their dream vacation twisted into a nightmare as a hidden stalker turned their family retreat into a deadly game of fear and survival. The Ramirez family had been looking forward to their summer trip for months, and when the day finally came, it felt like the perfect escape from their exhausting routines. Carlos and Maria, the parents, had planned everything down to the smallest detail. The car was packed tightly with suitcases, snacks for the road, and the children's favorite games. Their two kids, Elena and Mateo, could barely contain their excitement as they left the busy city behind and headed toward the quiet mountains. The drive itself felt like the beginning of a dream. Rolling hills turned into thick forests, and soon the family was surrounded by towering pines and the sound of birds echoing through the air. Every mile brought them closer to what they believed would be a week of relaxation and bonding. When they finally reached the cabin, it was even more beautiful than they imagined. Nestled between tall trees, it stood on a small rise overlooking a sparkling lake. The wooden porch stretched wide, and the scent of pine drifted through the warm breeze. The family rushed inside, admiring the rustic charm stone fireplace, cozy furniture, and shelves filled with old books. It felt like stepping into another world, far from deadlines, homework, and the noise of city life. That first day was spent in pure joy. Elena and Mateo ran down to the lake, skipping stones across the glassy surface while their parents set up a grill on the porch. The smell of barbecue filled the evening air as laughter echoed across the clearing. Later that night, the stars revealed themselves in a way the family had never seen before. They lay on a blanket together, pointing out constellations and sharing quiet moments of peace. For Carlos and Maria, this was everything they had hoped for, a chance to reconnect, to remind themselves of what truly mattered. The children drifted to sleep quickly, exhausted from the excitement of the day. As the cabin lights dimmed and silence settled over the forest, the family felt completely safe, as though the world had slowed down just for them. What they didn't realize was that they were not as alone as they believed. Just beyond the trees, where the shadows grew thick and the road curved away from the clearing, a car had been parked for hours. Its engine was off, its lights dark, but someone sat inside, watching the glow of the cabin windows with unblinking focus. The Ramirez family thought they had found their paradise, but a stranger had already chosen them as part of a much darker plan. By the second evening, little signs began to break the illusion of the perfect vacation. At first, they were easy to dismiss. The gate leading to the narrow trail behind the cabin stood half open, even though Carlos remembered locking it firmly when they arrived. Maria noticed muddy footprints on the porch in the morning, prints that didn't match any of their shoes. She told herself it was probably from a stray hiker passing by, or perhaps just an animal leaving strange marks. Still, a quiet unease crept into her mind. Later that night, as the family prepared for bed, a soft snapping sound came from outside, branches cracking under careful weight. Carlos reassured himself that it was just deer moving through the woods, but even as he closed the curtains, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was too close to their temporary home. The following morning, Elena claimed she saw a reflection near the tree line while playing by the lake. She described it as glass catching the sunlight, like a car windshield hidden behind the trees. Carlos went to check, but the woods stretched endlessly with no sign of anything unusual. He brushed it off as a child's imagination, though his own thoughts wandered back to the footprints and the noise outside. Later that afternoon, while they drove down the winding road to a nearby town for supplies, Maria spotted something that chilled her: a dark sedan parked about 100 yards from the cabin's turnoff. Its windows were tinted, its body coated in dust, and there was no one visible inside. On the way back, the car was gone, though fresh tire tracks cut through the dirt. That night, a strange heaviness settled inside the cabin. Every creak of the wooden floors seemed louder. Every gust of wind against the windows felt sharper. Maria lay awake listening to the forest sounds, realizing she couldn't tell anymore what was natural and what wasn't. Somewhere in the darkness, something or someone seemed to be circling their lives, waiting for a moment to step closer. The family had come to the mountains to find peace, but peace was slipping away, replaced with a quiet fear that none of them wanted to admit. They thought they had left behind the chaos of their city life, unaware that a predator had followed them, patient and determined to stay hidden in the shadows. On the third morning, unease turned into something more concrete. Mateo's small backpack, which he had proudly left on the porch after collecting rocks from the lake, had vanished. The family searched everywhere inside the cabin, under the porch, even down the trail, but it was gone. At first, they tried to believe that an animal might have dragged it off, yet the thought made little sense. The pack had been zipped shut, filled with his favorite toys and a flashlight. Maria noticed that one of the lanterns they kept by the back door was also missing. Two items disappearing at once no longer felt like coincidence. As the day went on, they tried to distract themselves with another hike. The children laughed and played, but Carlos couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on their backs as they walked through the trees. Every snapping branch or shifting shadow made him turn around. When they finally returned, the cabin didn't feel the same. The back door stood slightly open, just enough to let the breeze push it against the frame. Carlos swore he had locked it before they left. Inside, nothing looked disturbed. Yet the air carried a strange stillness, as if someone had stepped through the rooms and left moments before their arrival. That evening, when they decided to drive into town again, the rental car refused to start. The engine turned, but sputtered out over and over, until it fell silent. Carlos checked under the hood, but saw nothing obvious. The vehicle had worked perfectly the day before. With the nearest service station miles away and no cell signal reaching their phones, they had no choice but to stay put. Maria suggested it could be bad luck, but deep down, she sensed it was something else. Night fell quickly, and the once cozy cabin now felt like a trap. Every window seemed vulnerable, every sound from outside sharper than before. They lit candles and tried to act calm for the children's sake, but their nerves betrayed them. The realization hung unspoken in the air. Someone was toying with them. The missing items, the open door, the silent car, these were not accidents. They were steps in a plan designed to leave the family stranded, helpless, and waiting for whatever was coming next. Somewhere beyond the walls, hidden by the forest shadows, a figure watched their unease grow, knowing the game had only just begun. The next morning brought the most disturbing discovery yet. As the sun rose over the trees and light spilled across the porch, Maria noticed something strange etched into the wooden railing. At first, she thought it was old graffiti left by past visitors, but when she leaned closer, her breath caught in her throat. 4 letters had been carved into the wood, jagged and fresh, the splinters still curling outward. Each letter stood for their names: C for Carlos, M for Maria, E for Elena, and M for Mateo. The realization spread like ice through her chest. Someone had not only been near their cabin, but they knew exactly who they were. Carlos tried to remain calm as he inspected the carving, but his hands trembled. Whoever had done this had been close enough to watch them, close enough to learn their names. The questions came rushing all at once. Had the stalker followed them from home? Was it someone they had unknowingly crossed paths with before? While the children ate their breakfast inside, Carlos searched the perimeter of the cabin. That was when he found something wedged beneath the steps leading up to the porch, a small notebook with a cracked leather cover, damp from the morning dew. Inside, page after page revealed a disturbing level of obsession. There were crude sketches of their faces, notes about what time they usually left for hikes, when the children played near the lake, even the kind of meals they cooked. Some entries were dated weeks earlier, long before the family even arrived at the cabin. This wasn't random. They had been chosen, studied, and tracked. Maria felt her knees weaken as she realized they were not the first, and they might not be the last. When they tried calling for help, their phones showed no signal at all. Even the emergency call option failed to connect. The isolation of the forest now felt suffocating, every tree a hiding place for the stranger who had been haunting them. Carlos considered walking down the road to search for help, but fear gnawed at him. What if that was exactly what the stalker wanted? Inside the cabin, the children sensed the tension, their questions met with forced smiles. The Ramirez family had come to the mountains for peace, but now they were prisoners of fear, trapped in a nightmare carefully constructed by someone who knew far too much about them. Just before dawn, the fragile calm inside the cabin was shattered by a violent crash. Glass scattered across the wooden floor as the back window gave way under a forceful strike. The sound jolted everyone awake, their hearts racing as they scrambled to their feet. Carlos rushed to the children, pulling them close while Maria tried to steady her shaking hands. For a few long moments, silence followed, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves outside. Whoever had been circling them was no longer content with watching. They were making their presence known. With no working car and no signal on their phones, the family had few choices. Carlos grabbed a flashlight and urged everyone toward the front door. Deciding it was safer to take their chances in the woods than remain in the cabin that now felt like a cage, they moved quickly, their footsteps crunching against the undergrowth as the forest swallowed them. Behind them, the cabin loomed like a dark reminder of how quickly their dream vacation had unraveled. Every crack of a branch made them flinch, every shadow between the trees felt alive. The family pushed through the dense forest, trying to follow the faint outline of the dirt road they had driven just days earlier. Hours stretched on with no sign of another car or house. The children grew tired, their breaths ragged, but fear kept them moving. Finally, as the first streaks of morning sunlight cut through the treetops, a distant rumble echoed along the road. A pickup truck appeared, its headlights dim in the rising light. Desperate, Carlos waved his arms wildly until the driver slowed and stopped. The stranger in the truck listened to their frantic story and agreed to take them to the nearest police station. Relief flooded the family as they climbed into the vehicle, but the fear lingered, refusing to let go. When police officers arrived at the cabin later that day, they found the place abandoned. The broken glass was scattered across the floor, but beyond that, there was no trace of an intruder. The notebook that Carlos had discovered beneath the steps was missing, as if it had never existed. Investigators concluded that the stalker had been hiding in the area for some time, watching and waiting for vulnerable families to arrive. Yet no arrests were ever made, and no identity was uncovered. For the Ramirez family, the mountains became a place they could never think of fondly again. Their vacation, once meant to heal and bring joy, became a haunting memory of how quickly safety can vanish when someone chooses to turn paradise into a trap.